Andrea, it's so lovely to see you. Thank you so much for coming and having this conversation with me about play. I'm so excited.
Thank you, Deborah. And I'm so excited that you even invited me to have this conversation. And just to give our listeners a little background, Deborah and I, we just met within the last couple of months, and we were both attending a spiritual business networking meeting. And I felt moved to reach out to Deborah to have, just a one-on-one, have a cup of tea together on Zoom, get to know each other a bit more. And it was through the ebbs and the flows, the play of our conversation, that you came up with this brilliant idea. And I think there's so much value here for people. And, I think it would be great if you could maybe say more specifically what your inspiration was and what we're going to be talking about.
Fabulous. So I would like to talk about play and the power of play, especially in terms of the fact that most of us, those listening, and certainly us, that we're really into how can we be more aligned with the universe? How can we be more co-creative? And I believe that we can do that through play. And what drew me to have this conversation with you was because in something you were saying, you said something about play and that you work with your clients using play. And I thought, well, so do I. And I'd not really come across it before in anyone else. And I thought, wow, I'd love to share with each other just a little bit about where we're coming from, where we're each coming from in terms of play, what we mean by it, because we may mean something slightly differently, and why we feel it's so important in our spiritual growth and in terms of our purpose and mission here.
Beautiful. Where do you want to begin?
Okay, well, to tell you the truth, I would like to begin with the astrology.
Okay.
Because Venus has been in Leo since around the summer solstice. Now, it always is. It's always in Leo in the summer, some point in the summer. And it's usually in Leo for 3 to 4 weeks. But this summer, it's in for 4.25 months. That's massive. That for me, it's like when something is so out of its normal rhythm in astrology, it has to be something that we're being told to listen to.
Okay.
Pay attention to this. So the reason it's been so long in Leo is because it went retrograde in Leo. So most people have heard about retrograde planets. What it means is that although no planets are really going backwards, they all go around the sun like this. None of them go backwards around the sun. But because when we're looking at them from the Earth, at some point they look like they're going backwards. So they're looking forwards, and as they go around the sun, now they look like they're going backwards. And so for us on Earth, they look like they are going backwards. And Venus does this a lot, does it every year or whatever, but it's rarely within one sign. So it'll usually go, say, it'll go Leo. Sorry, I'm doing it for the other way around. Leo, Virgo. Oops, we're going backwards again, back through Virgo and back into Leo. Whereas this time it's gone all the way to the end of Leo, not quite got there, and then gone all the way back almost to the beginning of Leo again, before then coming forwards again. So it's stayed for the whole time in Leo. I've been through the ephemeris for the past 120 years, and I haven't found an example of Venus doing that. This is rare. Not only that, but at the same time, she's been sitting in a square for a lot of the time with Jupiter. So they've been at right angles to each other. And Jupiter makes everything bigger. So this whole Venus in Leo energy has been completely exaggerated and made bigger by the influence of Jupiter. So Venus, it's everything we love. It's what we love to do. It's what gives us pleasure. It's what gives us joy. Leo is the performer. It wants to shine. It's the in fact, Venus in Leo is the classic sun card in the major arcana of the tarot, where you have a child sitting on a horse and it's waving its banner and it's just beaming and it's just, you know, like it's this radiant child. Leo energy is radiant and it has a childlike quality to it because it loves to play. So we've had 4 months, well, we're not got there, the end of it yet. It doesn't finish until something like the second week of October. So we've had all this time to shine and to play and to have fun and to do all the things that our Venus loves to do. And as I said, it started around the summer solstice, and it literally, it went all the way forward. Can't remember when it started going backwards, but a few weeks ago. And it literally has started going forward again 2 days ago, 3 days ago. So we've been over it once. Sorry, I should go that way. We've been over it once. We went back over it. And now we're on the 3rd transit of it. So it's really useful to think back to the summer solstice and how have you engaged in what gives you fun, in how you want to play and how you want to shine. How have you engaged with that since the summer solstice? And it may be the last few weeks got a bit stickier, a bit trickier because it went backwards and it might have felt more difficult. But now we're going forwards again. It's like, okay, so I learned this and I learned this and I learned this, and I want to bring this into my life and I want to bring that into my life. So to everyone listening to this, make a little note of all the things you've done that you absolutely love to do. Because when we love to do something, we tend to do it playfully. Which then brings me into my definition of play. But it's a useful little thing to do, all the things you've loved to do. And now it's like, okay, so I want to bring more of that in. I don't want that to be just for the summer. I want to bring this into my life. And how am I going to do that?
Perfect timing for that.
Yeah.
All right. So you've got us all sitting on the edges of our seats. What is your definition of play?
Okay. So for me, it's got nothing to do with sports or board games or anything like that. It's that experience of when we are so absorbed in something, we just love doing it so much that we have no idea of time. We forget to eat, we forget to drink. We're just in it. We're just so present in whatever it is that we're doing, and it has a natural evolvement as you're engaging with it. So you just watch children, you know, they can be playing with sticks or mud or anything, and as they're playing, they're talking, they're usually telling a story, they're living, they're acting something out, and they're learning, because they're learning, if I do that on that sticks. Oh, I'm going to use that again. Well, they don't even think that. They just do use it again. It's something that bypasses the brain. So we don't have to think.
Wow. So it does, even though you're saying it bypasses the brain, it is sounding very right brain, that creative part of the brain. And, you know, children, they are so operating from their right brain. And so I'm seeing just that beautiful initial vision that you're putting out there of what play is. and how it opens up a very different experience for us that is much more enjoyable, much more engaged, much more productive. So that is an awesome place that you've started us at.
And tell me a little bit about your definition of play. How does it fit in with what you do?
Well, the reason that it came up in our initial conversation is because I was sharing with you about a coaching program that I offer. So I do coaching with people who are starting up spiritual businesses. And the name of my program is Legacy Play Adventure. And I was telling you what each piece of the name meant. And when I said about play, I said it's because I think we have all done too much work, and that we can really grow and do wonderful things in an environment of play. And so I actively create programs that create an environment of play so that it feels like we are playing rather than, doing something really hard, doing something scary. Because I think, things like starting a business, it's a really big thing to do. I mean, people call it a hero's journey. It is, it's like it demands every fiber of your being. And there's a very different experience when you are doing that in an atmosphere of that this is about playing, that this is not like it's not like I'm a piece of china that if I crash, I'm going to break and it's going to be the end of everything. But instead, getting into a place of, hey, it could be fun to try this out. It might not work. That's okay. But I'm surrounded by, other people, in my community or in my coaching program who are also doing this. And we are doing it as a game. Like I even have, created like a game for people to be starting out marketing, promoting their business. For a lot of people, it's like that's really scary to think about reaching out and, quote unquote, selling people, like the old model. It really doesn't resonate for heart-centered people. But instead, if you see it as, you're doing service to people by reaching out to them, and, not everybody is going to really benefit from what you're doing. But if you don't reach out at all, then the people who can benefit, they never find out about what you have to offer. And so you are doing a service by reaching out to people. And it doesn't have to be, I don't know, like there's kind of like so much behind this whole thing of reaching out to people, that there are so many things that people can really feel, if they're introverted, or maybe they're shy, or maybe they are just, socially awkward. And so it feels like a big thing to, even like reach out to one person and say, hey, would you like to have a conversation? I'd really love to touch base with you. I've just started up, a new business, and I'm offering, this great service, and I'm looking for people who might benefit from it. And then, that person can say, sure, I'd like to have a conversation with you, or they could say no. And this can all be done like in a softer environment. Like if you think about kindergarten, like you already brought up about children, like we can create, softer spaces for ourselves where it's okay to fall down. It's okay for somebody to say no, and for it just to be in an environment of that holding, that warmth, that connection with community, that knowing that it's a learning. You also talked about being able to learn so much more easily, like in that state of play or that state of flow. And so by just creating an environment that is feeling like play, like, hey, I can just try this, and it's not the end of the world if it doesn't work out, but it could be kind of fun to try my idea, see if my idea works out. It's a totally different experience. So that's why I'm always trying to create, and it is, I mean, I wouldn't say my coaching programs are like a childlike atmosphere, but I really do invite the inner child to come in so that we can be all of us. We don't have to just like shove our inner child into the closet so that we can, be the brave adult to do this thing. But it's actually, we can welcome our inner child to be part of the experience and to make it more fun. So I'm wondering if that makes any sense. I've never answered this question before, so please do tell me.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so I've got two things came up for me. maybe the second one is quicker to answer. So I love the way you brought in about being in flow, because I think that they're so closely linked, aren't they? Play and being in flow. And I think for a lot of people, they do understand that experience of being in flow. They know, people, I think a lot of people know what that means, to have that experience. And they maybe don't describe it as play. Whereas for me, they're quite closely connected to each other. And then the other, I was wondering, in terms of doing this marketing, I remember, one of the exercises I did was, like, I had to write a long list of people and reach out to them all. And it was like, oh, like this. How you, if you could give us a little example of how you make that playful.
Okay.
That's possible.
Well, first of all, because I know that it is, a scary thing for people to be starting to do, I help people build like a supportive infrastructure before they start reaching out, so that they are feeling supported by systems that they've set up, things that support them in tracking their conversations with people. So they're not just like, kind of flying by the seat of their pants, so that they feel like, that they have set up some infrastructure for reaching out, and they've got, pieces in place for, what is their initial reach out going to look like. And if somebody says, yeah, I'd like to have a conversation, then what is going to be your next step? Like, they already have like really and developed from their heart these marketing materials. So I have them set up this infrastructure before, and then the last month of the program is this massive reach out. And so a piece of it is that they already have some secure infrastructure in place. So they don't, like, they can believe in themselves, and they know they have things to rely on. They've thought things through. They're not just doing this by the seat of their pants. And then when we get to this 1 month of the game, then first of all, I think it's helpful having the support of weekly meetings with the coaching group and with myself, so that they know that if any question or something doesn't work out, they can just bring it to the next coaching group meeting. So I think having support. So we're just taking learnings from my program, which anybody could do. So having that support of a weekly connection where they can ask any question about anything that's not working or not feeling right, just having that support helps them to relax more. And so I set it up as a game. So we've got, this, we've got an internet-based game sheet where people are logging how many people they reached out to that day, how many people they had a conversation with about what their service or their good is. And so they're actually tracking their numbers in a game sheet. So first of all, they know that they're making progress because they can look at their game sheet. If they're not reaching out to people, then it is also abundantly clear, because the game sheet shows all. And, but there's not like a sort of like a shaming thing. There is a warmth in the community of doing it with a group. I think that warmth, instead of just being alone, like, it sounds like you were on your own with this big list that you were supposed to reach out to all
I
these.
wasn't actually.
Oh, you were with other people?
Well, I was in a chat group that I could share what I was doing. I'm highly motivated. I was given a system to use, and I suppose I sort of, because I've worked so much with play and being in flow and doing everything creatively and doing everything when it feels like the right time to do it. And I will set myself goals, like, I said to you before, I've got 4 presentations to do in the next month. I will, and I will do it. If I set myself something, I will do it. But in order to do it, I have to go into play mode for it to get done. And I now have done that enough. I've practiced that consciously now for over a year or more. I know it works. So the way that I was taught, going back to, the fact I had to do all these calls, the way I was taught was done in quite a playful way. And then I was left to do it. And I did that in my own playful way. Yeah, I must admit, I have had the benefit of having had some tutors who are able to teach in quite a playful way as well.
Well, so all the more reason why you have accumulated wisdom to share about play. And I'm wondering if maybe it would be helpful for each of us to share how we move into a place of play. So you just said, that in order to get all this work done, you're going to have to move into a place of play. So would you like to each of us share what, how we personally move into play? And, maybe people can latch on to some principles, something that resonates for them and get them going too. Because I think, I think a lot of people want to be more playful, but maybe they don't know how to move into a more playful place.
I agree.
You game?
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to start?
No, you're the one who first brought it up. You start.
Okay. Okay. So for me, it's about creating space. I wasn't doing this consciously, but I realize it is sort of what I do. It was through another conversation with a friend that I've also recorded, where she said that she books 40% of her diary is planned, and the other 60% she always leaves open. I'm talking about work diary. Because she wants to be available for whatever presents itself during that 60%. I've automatically been doing something along those lines. I mean, I don't add up the numbers or anything, but I like to have most of my working space in my diary is empty, because although I always have a list of things that I want to do or I need to do, I never, other than appointments like this, I never book those things in. I never plan them in. Because what I've discovered is that every day I know what my list is, but I will always approach the day with, what's the best thing to do today? And sometimes it will be something on that list, and sometimes it won't. It'll be something completely different. But I've come to understand that if I always ask what's the best thing to do today, that everything on that list does get done. Some things get done, like might take quite a long time because they're not actually that urgent. And other things, it'll be like, you really have to get on with this now. You really need to do this now. But what I've realized is that it's almost like I'm negotiating with the planets for the absolutely precise best moment to do whatever activity that is on my list. And when I do that, it gets done really fast. Just gets done. I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, I'm doing that now. Okay, it's done. And sometimes something that I thought was going to take hours, like, oh, it only took 15 minutes or whatever. But there is a secret to this, and that is to not use clock time. So I don't wear a watch or anything. And so, for example, for this appointment now, I set my alarm on my phone about half an hour before, because I thought it's going to take me about half an hour to psychologically change from where I am to where I need to be, and to make sure that I've got myself ready and everything. So I set the alarm, and then I set it for 5 minutes beforehand. Okay, yep, I'm ready. Off we go. I'm here, present, whatever. So I will always set the alarm on my phone for appointments. But other than that, I don't ever look at the time. And if I have to open my phone to look at a text or something, you know, it's always got the time, hasn't it? Right across the top in great big numbers. They're just numbers. So like it says 1841. Okay, we've got a 1 at each end and the 8's double the 4. I just see patterns, and most of the time they are angelic numbers. You know, there'll be 1221 is my favorite one, or 1444. You know, they're all 1551. You know, it's like they're always patterns of numbers, and I just go, oh yeah, cool, brilliant, we're here. But in order to know what time it is, I then have to go, okay, 1551, what does that mean? That means 10 to 4. So my brain is not operating in linear clock time. And children don't operate in linear clock time. They move effortlessly from one thing to another. They could spend hours on something and 5 minutes on something else, and no concept or whatever. You know, in the old days, parents used to say, come home when it gets dark. And they go, oh, it's dark, I better go home. You know, it's like they rarely even get dictated by their stomachs. You know, they'll suddenly go, oh, I've got to go home now. Whoa, I'm starving. And do you know that we've only had clock time for 150 years?
Wow. No, I did not.
So prior to that, people did, you know, if you're wealthy, you had a watch, and churches would have the time, but everywhere had a different time thing. So even in one city in the UK, they could be on 2 different times, clock times. And basically people would hear the factory alarm in the morning and they go, oh, I've got to go now to work. Or, you know, they used to hear the bell, you know, one bell is 1 a.m. and all is well in the middle of the night, you know. It's like, but that was the closest they ever got to time, unless they happened to have a sundial. And it was only 150 years ago, when, with the advent of the railway, when the trains had to meet, that they said, okay, we're going to standardize time. It's all going to be on Greenwich Mean Time, and everybody will now operate on time.
Well, that's very interesting.
Only 150 years ago. You know, it's something that is so new to our psychology. And it's something that has to be very much taught to us. You remember, you learn to tell the time when you're about 6 or 7, age 6 or 7. Up until then, you have no concept of time, daytime or nighttime. So for me, it's really important to get out of time and to lose oneself in and not have to worry about time.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing that strategy. And, you know, that is, I'm sure it's going to be mind-blowing for a lot of people that listen to this. And, you know, I was like really, you know, listening, and also I will admit, even just a little uncomfortable as I was hearing, you know, what you were describing. It's very edgy. It's very like, you know, like breaking out of the constructs that we have, you know, for those in this generation, we have lived and grown up in. So just to, you know, acknowledge. And when I think about my approach to play, I am a very highly functioning person. I have a lot of things on the go. And so, you did get me thinking, like I do have quite a lot that's planned in my schedule. And I'm grateful that I have an electronic schedule. It's very easy to move things as needed because, oftentimes when I'm doing something new, it will take longer than what I thought it would take. That has been my standard pattern. Very infrequently, something takes less time than what I expected. But I do work with time more. However, I fully understand that in order to get into that state of playfulness for really the most, engaged, heart-centered, vibrant kind of work, I need to be able to relax. So if it's, if I'm like approaching an appointment in my calendar, like a self-appointment for doing a piece of work, it is very unhelpful to feel like that I've got this constricted thing, or it can, that I need to, like, it's just so important to move out of that constricted place into a very open and expansive place, which I think you do with your method. So just to share how who I'm much more highly structured than you are, how I move into that more playful place is I need to create space without distractions. So, my phone ringer is off and my email program is closed. So I've got space and time for myself. And then I will take some time to connect with myself and to check in about how I'm doing. Part of my playful approach to life is that I have done a lot of healing work that has helped me to connect with different developmental parts of myself. I call them my inner children. And so I've got a lot of inner children. And one of them, my tween, Andy, who's 13, she has turned out to be this amazing part of me to connect in with and to see, how relaxed am I to be doing this work, Andy, on a scale of 1 to 10. And so, wherever it is, like, maybe she'll say it's a 3, maybe she'll say it's a 6. And so I will ask her, okay, so that's great. What is lifting it up to a 3, or what's lifting it up to a 6? And so then she'll give information, which will sound very positive because it's going to be some positive stuff that has led to me being above a 1. And then I say, what can I do to increase my score by 1/4 of a point? So, really low bar. What is a small something I can do? So it might be, just getting down on the floor and doing a few stretches, or, and so with the connecting with my inner tween, it's a way of finding out what will help me get into a place of feeling better in myself. Because if, when I'm out in the world and dealing with lots of emails and things like that, I'm in a different state. It's a more administrative state. But to be doing the creative work, I need to have this process of getting into a place where I'm feeling good, so that I can then get into that flow state that you've talked about. So although my method is completely different than yours, it is, I think, like achieving that way of being relaxed and open, being able to be connected with the stars, so that it's not just this little tiny life that I'm living here in my house, but actually connected, with the cosmos, so that I can be bringing in that information through my work and for working with the people that I serve. So that's been an important strategy that I've used to be able to get in to a place. And, it has so much relationship with self-care. I have found that self-care is really instrumental in being able to be in a more relaxed place of well-being. Because if we're not practicing good self-care, if our bodies are overstressed, if our hearts, if our emotions are overstressed, like, we don't have a hope or a prayer of getting into a place of playfulness. Playfulness happens in that place of vibrancy. If we're in a place of survival, we're not going to be able to get into that thriving place of the playfulness. So self-care, it really is a really key to being able to really enjoy our life, enjoy what we are doing, and come from, a more, with child eyes, being able to see, how might we create our day. Like, I do love your what you described as your method. I think there's a lot of value in, I'm probably going to take some time to even journal about it. It's very powerful what you've shared. So yeah, what do you think about what I just shared?
Yeah. Well, I'm like, we have an English saying, horses for courses, or courses for horses. I never remember which one it is. And I love that. I love that you say, okay, I have dedicated this time, and I know that I need to change my state in order to be there. And so many people want to know how to change their state quickly.
Hmm.
We don't want to take 2 days to change it. I want to change it now. I want to get from left brain to right brain now. And I love that you said about, your subpersonalities, because in astrology, every planet is a subpersonality. But well, actually, when I trained, 35 years ago, we did look very specifically at who those subpersonalities were. But it's not something I've worked with since. And you've given me a really good idea. I love that. I love that. So I'd love to know, which planet that subpersonality is that you've got. Because Venus is a subpersonality. It's like we go to Venus when we go, I really want to have a lovely time. What is going to give me joy and pleasure? We're going to Venus to ask for that. And Venus says to me, because I'm Venus in Pisces, go and sit by the sea. I go, oh, yes, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Well, I love how, there can be so many different ways of, accessing these pure sources of wisdom and insight that can help us move into that more relaxed, more taken care of state where we can play.
Yeah. And obviously it's like, we're all different, aren't we? I mean, you're obviously, as you said, you're quite high functioning. I am, but I sort of get the impression that whereas you may be a bit more airy, I'm a bit more watery, and other people are going to be more fiery or more earthy. Do you know what I mean? And so we each have a very different way of operating, and they're all equally valid and equally important. But I think that you touched on something that is very, very dear to my heart, and it's one thing I've been talking about now for several years. And that is, if we're living under stress hormones, it's virtually impossible to make that connection to source, to be able to play, to be able to create it, because stress hormones, particularly cortisol and adrenaline, for instant things, they're just going to keep us alive. They're not bothered about us having a good time.
Yeah.
They're just like, you've got to get from the beginning of this day to the end of this day. How are you going to do that type of thing? That's what cortisol does for us. And it withdraws everything to the basic functions of the body, so that there is no space left. So you're right. It's like, if you're feeling like really stressed, then you need to do something about your self-care first.
Yes, it's a wonderful place to start. So Deborah, this will probably come as no surprise to you, but I'm actually going to have to get going in a few minutes here to keep to my schedule. And so I'm wondering what would be, like a really beautiful way for us to close this conversation, because I really would like for people, to really get benefit from this. And also, if anybody connects with either of our style, could be really good to also give them, some invitation for connecting further.
Yes,
So how can we close
definitely.
this beautifully?
So, well, actually, do you know what? I felt that last statement you made was a beautiful closing statement. Self-care is a good place to start. But what I suggest is beneath this video, I will put down your website so that people know where to find you.
So I'd really like to share this conversation with my community as well. So could you maybe just share, what is your service? What is the work that you
Oh,
do?
yes, of course. So fundamentally, I'm an astrologer. And I work with people in order to help them free their creative genius. Because I believe that Professor George Hand in the late 60s did a test, and he said that 98% of 5-year-olds are creative geniuses. But by the time they get to the early 30s, there's only 2%. So I'm like, well, we all were creative geniuses. How do we get back there? What's holding us back from being our creative genius? So I work with astrology and play, obviously, through my retreats. And
Mm.
it's very much about, I love dressing up. So I have a huge dressing up wardrobe, and we do the whole retreat is a ceremony. And we do a lot of playful things, pushing the boundaries, like getting in freezing cold water or getting dressed up in weird clothes that you would never normally go out in. But wow, look at me. I'm a different person. Yeah, so I tend to work with the play more on my retreats. But
Okay.
I teach astrology and I do astrology readings.
Okay. That sounds really awesome. And
And
shall
you?
I share what I do? So
Yes.
I'm a spiritual business coach. And so I work with people who are either thinking of opening a business that has like some spiritual underlining, or people who actually have already started a spiritual business, but it's not really going the way that they would like. So I help people really kickstart their soul aligned business. And I love business, and I love bringing an organic way and a playful way for people to be able to get that infrastructure in place that really is suited to who they are. Because as you said before, we are all different types of people. And so it's important to set up our business in a way that really suits our personality. So I really enjoy doing that kind of caring work and inspiring work of getting people up and running with their spiritual businesses.
And of course, more and more of us who are waking up are saying, I don't want to do the 9 to 5. I want to share what comes from my heart.
Exactly. Well, thank you again for inspiring this conversation. And I really hope that people will get some beneficial ideas, insights, ahas, and tips for bringing more play into their lives from this conversation. So may this conversation have benefit to everyone who happens upon it.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for coming and joining me in this conversation. It's been lovely to connect with you again.
It really has.